Welcome to our show with Conversato. Your host here is Prince Lee. Today, as always, we'll be talking about those things that affect our culture and our community and how best we can deal with the issues of today. Our guest today is Mr. Russell Williams, who is a National Field Director of the National Center for Economic and Social Justice and has been a past president of the local, that is Hartford, Connecticut, chapter of the NAACP. Our guest has been invited here today to discuss those disciplines that might be needed for the black community, of which economics is a factor. We always seem to feel that what should we do as a people? What should be our focus and concentration? Should it be on the electoral process? Should it be on education, culturally? Exactly what disciplines should we focus on? Today we're going to talk about economics and hopefully, considering the expertise of our guests, maybe at a later day we will talk about some other things such as communications. Given the shortness of time, I will put before Mr. Williams his Capital Homestead Act as a tool for economics. I'd like to hear about that, if you would.
Sure. The Capital Homestead Act was developed by the Center for Economic and Social Justice. It is, frankly, an act that is very similar to Lincoln's Homestead Act, where basically every citizen was offered the opportunity to have land, and to use that land to produce, goods and or products for themselves and for others. Has a basic way of developing the land here in America. Obviously, land has ran out, so what we do at the Center for Economic and Social Justice is the focus is on something that will never run out, which is intellectual property. We're frankly looking at the new technology that is upon us, and hoping that others will realize that unless we as citizens own some of that technology will own us. Those things are happening very rapidly, and we feel very committed to the idea that that intellectual property will be what guides us into the future.
It seems to me that there's a certain amount of equity in that, considering X amount of people, especially people in the cities, in the minorities, have been out of the prospects of owning land property, real estate property, and the development of intellectual property, which is basically whatever your mind can so consider. How would something like that be formatted or encouraged? Just as open as intellectual property is.
Well, obviously, it has to be monetized. What will happen, we believe, is that the new technology is something that we all should have the ability to invest in. If I can digress for just a moment, we like to start fundamentally with, we talk about economics at the Center for Economic and Social Justice, just what money is. And money is considered really the measuring or let's say anything that can settle a debt. Money is, when most people think of money, they consider the U.S. currency that they carry around in their pockets. Well, all that does, Prince, is simply measures the value of a product or service. So we have to start from that fundamental premise. If the U.S. currency that we carry around in our pockets is only measuring the value of a good or service, then most of us, especially in distressed areas, in impoverished areas, in the black community, need to understand that we are not getting, or the value that we hold is far greater than what we're actually realizing.
Well, you mentioned that, and I've heard fairly recently with some Afrocentric groups locking into the concept of virtual money, and the idea being establishing being more responsible for establishing what is valuable, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And if this is valuable, again, maybe with the concept of intellectual property, if this, we set a value to this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to develop the currency,
Mm-hmm.
to represent that value. So, and it's a tremendous concept. I mean, you look at the value of the points so far as the computer games
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that are actually being openly traded.
Mm-hmm.
See somebody playing a game on Facebook, okay, and supposedly that's valuable enough for somebody to want to be able to trade at goods and products. So it's very innovative, especially coming from your organization.
Well, as abstract as the concept may seem, again, there are fundamentals about currency and about money that I think, by and large, most people don't pay a whole lot of attention to, and just haven't thought an awful lot about. Not even myself until, I became, more involved in the work that happens at the center.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've since learned after working with Dr. Curlin, who is the president and CEO of the operations, and Mike Greeny, who's an expert, in Don Rowland, some of those folks who were there, and certainly would urge your listeners and your viewers to look at the work that's coming out of the center. It's at cesj.org. What they're doing is they're helping people to understand how our monetary system works. The things like the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is what monetizes anything that happens, if you will, within our economy. And as it would be, the Federal Reserve is actually the linchpin for currency throughout the world. Ours is. And we're not paying particular attention to that. People often have been asking in this political season, where will the money come from? Where will the money come from? Well, frankly, the money will come from what the Federal Reserve determines, its value will be. Mm-hmm. And so once we start to understand fundamentally those kinds of vehicles, then we can better chart our own futures.
This has an ordinary citizen.
Mm-hmm.
How is economics presented to me, other than it being like a rocket science?
Okay.
It's just so I can know about it, so I can be so naive and fit it into my just simple budget.
I think we have to start with as I've mentioned before, just what money is.
Mm-hmm.
We have to start from that basic fundamental premise. Money, as most people look at it, the currency that they carry around in their pocket, U.S. currency, the dollars, if you will, it just simply measures the value of things. But I think a point that might hit home with most of us, and certainly the people who I've worked with over the many years. Um, poverty, poverty, especially in urban areas, in my opinion, is the reason for most of what happens in those areas. There's a direct correlation between poverty and crime. There's a direct correlation between poverty and homelessness. Those ills that we're dealing with have to do with everybody's limited access to capital and to money. There's limited access, and so it is first and foremost on the minds of people in the community. This thing called money, is central to our thinking and what we do, how we act, and so understanding what money is critical for us to operate within this capitalistic society.
We're talking about how you might educate just the ordinary citizen about economic and maybe economic development. Taking it one step further, you take your background as before you got involved with this Center of Economic and Social Justice, that there was leadership and management qualities that you showed in your prior positions of the head of the local NSAP chapter. So there was a certain amount of educational process so far as you were concerned about economics.
Sure.
Same question so far as our quote-unquote leadership. How do we get them involved with, economics, not just, local, national economics, international economics is kind of be like necessary. How you bring them over?
Oh, I'm working at that as we speak. And frankly, it is not an easy undertaking. Again, I urge those who listen and who view your program to start with, the website, cesj.org. Please take a look at that. I mean, that website will cover, all of those little, questions that you may or may not think of with regards to this new idea we're talking about that would empower every single citizen. But it is new, and it does require, quite frankly, out-of-the-box thinking. There are lots of folks in academia and in politics who haven't, as of yet, embraced the idea of empowering every citizen in a way that they can, appreciate, our economy and how our economy, might thrive if given the opportunity, to look at it differently. What has happened, unfortunately, is in this political season, you are listening to people on one side of the aisle talk about business and businesses creating jobs, and on the other side of the aisle, how people ought to be able to, to decide for themselves, the direction that the country will take with its government and with its democracy. Well, our idea is really right there in the middle. We believe, that our democracy, our Constitution, needs tweaking. That it was created by man, and it is an imperfect. It's an imperfect thing, our Constitution, and so you're absolutely on point with regards to education and spending the time that's necessary to answer the questions and to talk to the people very candidly about economics and how they're affected with it on a day-to-day basis.
One of my pet peeves is, again, the concept of education about economic matters is that this mixture where people cannot separate governmental structure, governmental organization, and economic policy. it's communism is not a form of government; it's a form of economics policy. Capitalism is not a form of government, but these things become intermeshed.
That's right.
Whereas, to a classic example that's affecting us right now, I feel, is the whole concept of socialism.
Mm.
You know, and our president being like, what's he bringing socialism? You know what? You mean evil government, big government? Got nothing to do with it.
Right.
It's
That's
economics where, you know, you need to partner up. The ownership has to be partner up just to go out and do certain things.
right.
There was no way in the world
Right.
that
Right.
healthcare was going to get straightened out purely in a capitalist mode. Wasn't going to happen.
Right.
You know, until you got part of that ownership involved with government. And healthcare isn't the only one. Fixing the infrastructure is not going to get solved in a purely capitalist mode. You know, so to have that large portion of the people thinking like, oh, how wrong could this be? Where it's like, it's the only way it was going to happen.
Yeah. You make a great point. You know, socialism, I think, in my opinion, is summed up, you know, with, you know, essentially just, you know, everything being controlled by the state. And that's the fear that is raised on one side of the aisle, that there's too much government in people's lives, where you know and I know, you know, being a part of the communities that we try to serve, that if it were not for government being a part of those people's lives, you know, then they probably wouldn't have lives at all. And you know, leaving it up to just you know, those ideologues who believe that business will and markets will create the supply and the demand that's necessary to make all of us productive, that hasn't worked either. I think that you know, quite frankly, you know, understanding those systems is very important. You know, when it comes to you know, any of those ideas that you've referred to, any of those isms that you've talked about, they are at best just tools. They are tools that are designed to do specific things.
Well, I'm excuse me. That's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
I'm thinking about the Homestead Capitalist Act.
Capital Homestead Act,
And
yeah.
I'm just like thinking on the same guise of disinformation, someone calling that like, you know, communist tool.
Yeah,
You know, and it going out like that, and you know,
yeah.
its acceptance or non-acceptance
Sure.
being
Sure.
colored
Absolutely.
by someone like, oh, that's communism.
Well, see, here's the thing, you know, and I've gotten this as a part of my education, you know, through the center and working with those folks who are trying to get us to think outside of the box. The number one goal of government, number one, is to obtain justice. To obtain justice. Government should make things fair across the board. Now, unfortunately, you know, the systems that, the isms that we've referred to don't necessarily do that. You know, they are, in theory, you know, hopefully you can reach that level of equality. But you know, like I know in America, that, you know, capitalism has continued to perpetuate the wealth of those who are already wealthy. you know, and it's unfortunate. I just think that if you thought for just a moment, if those people who are making these decisions on either side of the aisle thought for a moment, and they thought about letting every citizen enjoy the profits that are made from those enterprises, I think we as a country would be a lot better off. If every citizen could be a shareholder, you know, in the profits and dividends that
That's
are
communism.
no.
Oh my goodness!
Not at all.
Talk about.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. They're participating. They're participating. They're using their money to participate in the production in this country. It's capitalism in one of its best forms. I mean, the wealthiest of wealthy in this country don't do a whole lot of work. Their money actually is used to make money, and that's one of the things that we talk about too at the center. Most people just think in terms of their labor making money, when in fact it's not just your labor that will make money, but also using your money wisely can earn you money as well. We call that binary economics.
Okay.
Yes. So
I'm going to get a little greedy. I was also wanted to get your ideas on communication. I know economics is big subject.
Sure.
And I'll use what you were saying about intellectual property and knowing that this is the information generation to try to get some things across. It seems that especially our communities, the black communities, really don't have access to the type of information that they need to manage, invest, govern themselves, their property, the whole thing. And it seems so unlikely that, considering how much information is out there, how much systems, social justice work, you name it, TVs,
right.
The whole package of possibilities of being able to access information that you could use managed through information systems shortly.
Sure.
What's happening in our community so far as just being able to access information and use it and apply it?
I think that that is a sort of an anomaly, if you will. I mean, we have at the Center for Economic and Social Justice have an initiative that we have in collaboration with the Connecticut State Missionary Baptist Convention. The Connecticut State Missionary Baptist Convention and its its contributors, Asher Association, if you will, Levites and those kinds of things that are around the state, have agreed to work together to share these new ideas. And the church, which is, and I think you would agree, has been considered for many years and still by and large now considered to be the vehicle for, at a very minimum, the fundamental understanding of what we do in our community. The church has
our
been
institution.
Oh, absolutely, it's
right.
Our institution. It is what has taught us, manners, courtesy. It's taught us how to treat each other. It has long and still stands as the vehicle for giving us the knowledge and giving us an understanding of how to live decent and godly lives. I mean, so when it comes to communication, I think that we fell short, unfortunately, because we think that the church is only a vehicle to talk about a religion or a specific doctrine, and it's not. It is so much more than that. And I think this initiative that we're talking about with the Connecticut State Missionary Baptist Convention and the Center for Economic and Social Justice, Asher Association here in Hartford, we intend to reach out to people who are members of churches and hopefully make disciples of them, which is part of our charge, is to make disciples of others. And so we want them to carry the message. We think that, frankly, that the church is the engine that's going to move us from the economic paradigm that we are involved in now to a new economic paradigm that will empower every single citizen.
You know, it's interesting that you're at this point. On prior shows, we've had criminologist and sociology professor out of Harvard University, and talking about the pastor's role in changing community, changing crime, drugs, whatever have you. And that's from the professional academia standpoint of view. And last week he did a show with this ordinary citizen who said, well, yeah, our pastors have to show some leadership and all, but the key to discipline is morality. You know, if you've got the morality together, everything else is going to fall in place. So that's enough of a charge for pastoral leadership. But in our society, you know, so far it seems that the black people's purview economically is the minister's also supposed to do something there. He's supposed, it's like the leader of the African village, you know, go out and create some economic opportunities for your congregation following.
Sure.
And that's an awful big charge to ask somebody to be a spiritual leader, and a financial leader. So there's like so much pressure on the church and the church leadership.
Well, I view it this way. Very often, vehicles are created to satisfy or to become solutions to specific problems. For example, you know, the automobile. It continues to evolve. They continue to make it better, more efficient, and so what it is though in its basic form is a tool. It's just a tool. So we have to learn how to use those tools to help us to become better. And so when you talk about other disciplines like economics, like sociology, whatever it is that helps us to understand ourselves better, to make us as individuals better, those things are tools. Those tools are used to help us to, to enhance and at the very minimum supplement, our lives, and to help us help each other become better.
Excellent closing statement to the subject of what disciplines do our community need. I thank you very much for your input, your interview. It's been a joy having you here, and hopefully that the process will be repeated soon.
The pleasure's all mine, Mr.
Thank you,
Prince. Very good. Thank you for having me.